The rain hammered against the window like accusatory fists as I stumbled into the kitchen that morning, my bare feet cold on the linoleum. The house felt unnaturally quiet. No clatter of Mom's coffee mug, no Dad's gruff cough echoing from the living room. At 18, I'd grown used to their disdainful glances, the way they'd whisper about my freakish birthmark that sprawled across my left cheek and temple like spilled ink from some ancient malevolent quill. A port wine stain, the doctors had called it once, back when they still bothered taking me to appointments, but to my parents, it was proof I'd been marked defective from the start, a living reminder that something had gone wrong the day I was born. This silence, though, it clawed at my gut in a way their usual coldness never had. The air smelled faintly of burnt toast and stale cigarette smoke, remnants of last night's argument. I'd stayed in my room with headphones on, trying to drown out the sound of Mom's sharp voice cutting through Dad's low growls. Something about money. Always money. Or maybe it was me again. It was usually me. I shuffled toward the fridge out of habit, stomach hollow, then froze. On the counter, beside the chipped ceramic bowl where we kept spare keys, sat a single sheet of lined notebook paper. It was folded once, precisely, and weighted down by a half-empty glass of whiskey. Dad's brand, the cheap one with the peeling label. My heart gave a sick lurch. They never left notes. They preferred to shout things they could later pretend they hadn't said. My fingers felt numb as I lifted the glass. The amber liquid sloshed, releasing a sour-sweet burn into the air. I unfolded the paper slowly, as though speed might make the words worse. Alex, we've tolerated your presence long enough. Stay out of sight, freak. We're starting over without you. Don't look for us. The house is yours. Sell it if you can. Goodbye. No signature. No, love Mom and Dad. Just those 18 words, sharp as broken glass, arranged like a guillotine sentence. The paper slipped from my hand and fluttered to the floor. I stared at it, waiting for the letters to rearrange themselves into something kinder, something that made sense. They didn't. My knees buckled. I hit the tiles hard enough to bruise, but the pain barely registered. A sound tore out of me, half sob, half animal howl, and once it started, I couldn't stop. My whole body shook with it. Tears streamed hot down my face, soaking the collar of my faded hoodie, dripping onto the note until the ink began to bleed. They left me. After everything. After the years of locked bedroom doors when guests came over, after Christmas mornings where my gifts were left in the garage because we don't want people asking questions, after the nights I heard Mom crying in the bathroom and Dad muttering that he never should have agreed to this, after every school photo I was forbidden to hang on the fridge, every doctor's visit where they told me the mark could be lasered away if we had the money, we never did, every time I caught them staring at me like I was a mistake they couldn't return. I was their child. Flawed, yes, visible proof of whatever genetic lottery they lost, but still theirs. I curled into myself on the cold floor, arms wrapped around my knees, forehead pressed to the note as though I could absorb the words back into nothingness. My birthmark throbbed in time with my pulse, hot and alive under the skin. I hated it more in that moment than I ever had, not because of what it looked like, but because it had given them the perfect excuse to treat me like something less than human. Minutes bled into hours, or maybe it was the other way around. Time lost meaning. The rain kept pounding, relentless, as though the sky itself was trying to wash the house clean of me. I didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't move except to rock slightly forward and back, the same motion I'd used as a kid when the taunts at school got too loud. Back then, I'd hide in the art room during lunch, sketching monsters with faces like mine until the bell rang. Now there was no bell, no one to wait for. The house creaked around me, old beams settling, pipes groaning like they shared my grief.
Every sound felt personal. The refrigerator clicked on and hummed judgment. The clock in the hallway ticked accusation. Even the rain seemed to whisper, "Freak, freak, freak," against the glass. At some point, the crying stopped, not because the hurt lessened, but because my body ran out of tears. My throat felt raw, scraped bloody from the inside. I lifted my head. The kitchen was dimmer now. The gray afternoon light had thickened toward evening. Shadows stretched long across the floor, reaching for me like fingers. I forced myself upright, using the counter for support. My legs shook. The note lay crumpled where it had fallen. I picked it up again, smoothed it flat with trembling hands, read it once more. The words hadn't changed, but something inside me had. Beneath the devastation, a thin, bright wire of fury began to glow. Not the hot, explosive kind. I'd felt that before, slamming doors, punching pillows until my knuckles bled. This was colder, sharper. It felt like the first clean breath after drowning. They thought they could erase me, discard me like a defective product, leave me this rotting house and call it mercy. They were wrong. I didn't know what came next. I didn't have a plan, didn't even have the energy to stand for long. But that wire of rage anchored me. It whispered promises I wasn't ready to name yet. Then the knock came. Sharp, official, 3 precise raps that cut through the rain noise like a blade. I froze. Another 3 knocks, louder this time. My pulse kicked up again, fear and adrenaline tangling together. No one visited this house. Not neighbors, they'd stopped trying years ago. Not friends, I didn't have any left after sophomore year when the rumors about my condition became too entertaining. Delivery drivers left packages on the porch without ringing. I wiped my face on my sleeves, smearing snot and tears. My reflection in the dark window showed red-rimmed eyes and a swollen mouth, the birthmarks stark against pale skin like a warning sign. I looked wrecked, I felt worse. The knocks came a 3rd time, insistent. I crossed the living room on unsteady legs, stepping around piles of unopened mail and Dad's abandoned work boots. The peephole was cloudy with years of neglect. I could barely make out a shape outside. A man, suit, briefcase. I hesitated, hand on the knob. What if it was them, coming back to make sure I'd read the note, coming back to take the house too? But the figure didn't move like either of them. Too straight, too patient. I cracked the door an inch, chain still latched. A man in his late 40s stood on the porch, rain dripping from the brim of his umbrella. Dark suit, white shirt, tie the color of wet slate. His face was calm, professional, but his eyes kind, almost sad, locked onto mine without flinching from the birthmark. "Alex Rivera?" he asked, his voice carrying easily over the rain, steady and warm. I swallowed. "Who's asking?" He reached into his breast pocket, slowly, telegraphing the movement, and produced a business card. He held it toward the gap. "Jonathan Hale, attorney at law. I represent an estate that concerns you." My stomach dropped another inch. "My parents sent you?" "No." Something flickered across his face. Pity, maybe, or regret. "Your parents are the reason I'm here. May I come in? This isn't a conversation for the doorstep." I stared at him for a long beat. Every instinct screamed to slam the door, but the cold wire inside me tugged the other way. Answers, truth, maybe even ammunition. I unlatched the chain. He stepped inside, shaking rain from his umbrella before closing it. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing us in the dim, stale house. He glanced around once, polite, not prying, then met my eyes again. "Alex," he said quietly, "we need to talk about your inheritance and the truth your parents have hidden from you all these years."
The lawyer's words landed like stones dropped into still water. Ripples spread through me, shock first, then disbelief, then something darker and hotter uncoiling in my chest. Inheritance? My voice cracked on the word. I sounded small, childlike, even though I was standing in the house that was supposedly mine now. My parents weren't rich.
They complained about every bill. They drove the same rusted sedan for 12 years. They weren't your parents, Jonathan Hale said gently. Not cruelly, just factually. He set his briefcase on the scarred kitchen table and opened it with a soft click that seemed deafening in the quiet house. Not biologically, and not in any meaningful way from what I've seen. He pulled out a thick manila folder, then a second, thinner one. He didn't rush, he let me breathe. When I didn't move, he slid the first folder toward me. Open it. My fingers felt clumsy, foreign. The folder was heavy. Inside lay a birth certificate, yellowed at the edges, official looking. The name at the top, Alexander Langford, born March 15th, 2008. Mother, Elena Marie Langford. Father, Victor James Langford. I stared at the names until they blurred. Langford, I whispered. The tech empire. The ones who'd pioneered neural interface AI before anyone else even knew what that meant. Their private plane had gone down in the Rockies when I was barely a year old. Every news outlet had run the story for weeks. Tragic loss of innovation, grieving nation, blah, blah, blah. I remember seeing the headlines on Mom's phone once when I was maybe 10. She snatched it away and told me not to ask stupid questions. I looked up at Hale. This is me? Yes. He opened the second folder. More documents, adoption papers signed by the Riveras, but the notary stamp looked wrong, too fresh for the date listed. Bank statements followed, wire transfers, monthly deposits starting the month after my birth, labeled vaguely as consulting fees. The amounts climbed over the years. By the time I was 13, they were 6 figures annually. They were paid to take you, to raise you quietly, to keep you out of sight. The Langfords had enemies, corporate rivals, patent thieves, people who stood to gain if the family line ended. When Elena and Victor died, the will was contested. Your existence was kept secret to protect you. The Riveras were supposed to be temporary guardians until the estate could be settled safely. Instead, you gestured at the statements. They turned temporary into permanent. They siphoned funds, forged documents, and buried the truth deep enough you'd never find it. My legs gave out again. I sank into the nearest chair, the one with the wobbly leg Dad always cursed at. The birthmark on my face felt like it was burning. I pressed my palm against it, hard, as though I could push the heat back inside. Why me? The question came out raw. Why treat me like garbage if they were getting paid? Hale's expression softened further, almost pained. Because the money came with conditions. The trust was structured to release fully on your 18th birthday, only to you directly if you were alive and of sound mind. They couldn't touch the principal. They could only draw from interest and allowances. To keep drawing, they had to keep you alive, hidden, and preferably compliant. Compliant people don't ask questions. Compliant people don't look too closely at bank records. And compliant people certainly don't get laser treatments or therapy or anything that might make them confident enough to leave. I laughed. It was an ugly, broken sound. They made me hate myself enough to never leave. Yes. The room spun slowly. I gripped the table edge until my knuckles ached. All those years, the locked doors during holidays, the way Mom flinched when anyone mentioned my face, Dad's muttered comments about cursed blood. It hadn't been shame, it was strategy. Keep the freak quiet, keep the freak small, keep the freak from ever wondering why the fridge was sometimes full of expensive wine while I ate ramen 3 nights in a row. How much? I asked. My voice sounded different now, flat, cold. Hale hesitated only a second. Current valuation of the estate, stocks, patents, real property, liquid assets, is just over $4.2 billion. The trust matures tomorrow at midnight. You'll have full access. $4.2 billion. The number didn't feel real. It felt like a weapon. I stood up too fast. The chair scraped back. They left yesterday, packed a suitcase each, took the good car, left me this note like I was a stray dog they were tired of feeding. Hale nodded. We've been monitoring them for months. The moment the trust clock started its final countdown, They moved. New identities, offshore accounts, a villa outside Puerto Vallarta. They thought they could disappear with the last of the siphoned interest, about 18 million, and live comfortably forever. 18 million, stolen from what should have been mine. The cold wire of rage inside me thickened into steel cable. I want it back. All of it. And I want them to know exactly who took it. Hale studied me for a long moment. Then he reached into his briefcase again and pulled out a slim black folder. I thought you might. Inside were photos, grainy surveillance shots. Mom laughing on a sun-drenched terrace, a cocktail in her hand. Dad behind the wheel of a sleek convertible, sunglasses on, looking relaxed for the first time I could ever remember. Another of them together at an outdoor market, arms linked, carefree. They looked happy. Without me. Something inside me snapped clean in half. Grief on one side, fury on the other. Both were useful. Tell me what I need to do, I said. Over the next few weeks, Hale became my shadow teacher. We moved fast. First came the lawyers, plural now, a team. They froze every account the Riveras still controlled. They filed emergency injunctions. They traced every wire transfer back 15 years. Evidence piled up like snowdrifts, falsified guardianship documents, tax evasion filings, emails between my so-called parents discussing how to handle the problem child if I ever started asking questions. I didn't cry anymore. Tears were a luxury I couldn't afford. Instead, I learned. I learned how to read balance sheets, how shell companies worked, how to speak to bankers without sounding like an 18-year-old kid who just inherited the moon. Hale taught me quietly, patiently, never once treating me like I was fragile. And every night, when the house was too quiet, I sat in the dark living room staring at that crumpled goodbye note. I didn't burn it. I kept it in my wallet like a talisman, a reminder. Then came the trap. With Hale's team and a private investigator who looked like he stepped out of a noir film, we built a false flag, a startup called NextLink Technologies, ostensibly cutting-edge neural interface software, exactly the kind of thing the Langfords had pioneered before anyone else even knew what that meant. We leaked just enough buzz to make it irresistible. Fake venture capital interest, a staged demo video, a limited seed round with high sky promised returns. They bit in 48 hours. I watched the wire come through from a borrowed laptop in a sterile conference room. $18 million, their entire stolen nest egg, funneled into an account we controlled. The gala was my idea. We rented the rooftop of the tallest hotel in Puerto Vallarta. Black tie, champagne fountains, a string quartet playing something mournful and elegant. I flew in the night before, wearing a tailored suit the color of midnight and a matte black mask that covered everything except my eyes and mouth. The birthmark was fully visible, pale red against my skin like a brand. I waited until they were drunk on free wine and the illusion of new wealth. Then, the lights dimmed, a screen the size of a billboard flickered to life behind the stage. I stepped into the spotlight. The mask came off slowly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed, phones lifted. Mom dropped her glass. It shattered like a gunshot. Dad's face drained of color. "Hello," I said into the microphone. My voice carried across the rooftop and streamed live to every major financial news outlet we'd quietly tipped off. I turned to the Riveras. "But you two remember me as Alex, the freak you raised, the one you abandoned with a note that said, 'Stay out of sight.'" The screen behind me began to scroll. Bank records, emails, forged signatures, surveillance photos, a greatest hits collection of their betrayal. Mom tried to run. Security, our security, gently but firmly blocked her. Dad looked like he might be sick. "You stole from a child. You made him hate the face he was born with. You made him believe he was worthless, and then you tried to disappear with the money meant to protect him." I stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "But I'm not hiding anymore." The crowd was silent now. Even the quartet had stopped playing. I looked straight at them. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, child endangerment, and identity theft. The federal agents are waiting downstairs, courtesy of international cooperation and a very large paper trail. As federal agents moved in, Mom started sobbing. Dad just stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply turned away. Later, in the quiet of a private jet carrying me back north, I pulled the crumpled goodbye note from my wallet one last time. I read it slowly, every hateful word.